second. But I can now hear you and see you. I can see the typing. It's so much better. I don't know what that was.
This is Damian Perdue of Think Theory Radio, Saturdays at 6 p.m. You're listening to Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
That's true.
This is WC.
I got Johnny. I got everybody. It's so much better now that I can hear you and I can hear Chicago. It's so much better. I'm so excited. I'm back. Oh, God.
You're really quiet, Hal.
You are super quiet.
Am I? Oh, well, I will fix that as well. That can't be. Can't be really quiet. So the issue I think a lot of us have, and with the situation in Minneapolis, in Atlanta, in all these places where you have violence going on, the issue that a lot of people have is, how do you tell who's on your side and who isn't? Is a point of concern. And this morning on Joy Reid, she was reporting what I was saying yesterday, that there are white supremacists in the and sorry, chat room, I will fix that for you. With that kind of languaging, you can tell that they're not really there because they care about the death of George Floyd, for example. That's not the thing. That's not the kind of thing people who are concerned about a social issue say, especially if they don't live there. Was it 90% or all of the folks that were arrested in Minneapolis were from out of state, not just out of town, but out of state, that they came there specifically with the goal of ratcheting up trouble and destroying any sense of community within it. That they were there as agent provocateurs specifically for the purpose of turning what was genuine rage, and outrage about the clear-cut, in my opinion, alleged murder of George Floyd, a death that did not have to occur in a very, by the way, and there are all sorts of odd splinters in this story themselves that I'm sure we will see played out in this, where Floyd and Chauvin, I don't know quite how we're pronouncing his name. I haven't bothered to try it. His wife certainly won't be concerned with it because she filed for divorce yesterday. I don't know if you saw that.
Wow.
Good times. But he has, they used to work together. They worked security in the same nightclub for somewhere in the area of 17 years. So do they have a history together? Do we know these guys? Did they, was it an ongoing thing? Did this guy, thank you, Al Vickery, for saying it's Chauvin is how he's, yeah. So we'll go with that one. Sure. Yeah. As in chauvinist, right? Chauvin, and George Floyd worked together. They were.
Yeah, isn't that weird? It's
super weird. It's not that weird in Minneapolis, which is one of those small, big cities. Minneapolis, St. Paul has a history of being a very racially diverse and kind of comfortable city back and forth. It is not one of the cities that you think of with a recurring history of racial violence within it. I don't doubt that there are people who have been, mistreated or feel they've been mistreated at some point. And yes, we can hear Johnny's typing entirely. That's true. I'm
typing important things.
I don't doubt it. Sure. You're tiny again. They were just commenting on the fact that you were your video was shrunk again. I'll fix it. So everything's responding well now. That's lovely. So, like I said, it is not one of the hot spots, Minneapolis, that you think of in terms of this.
No.
And it is, for all of us, I think in our generation, the city of Prince.
Mm-hmm.
I think of, for the way I picture Minneapolis in many ways is in its association with Paisley Park and its value in terms of having brought Prince and the time and the Minneapolis sound, in R&B to the world, right?
Yeah.
More so than almost any other city. It is. I mean, it is to that sound like Tennessee is to country music, or LA is, the Sunset Strip is to hair metal, in that regard.
Right.
So it is that distinct, right? So I don't think a lot of us picture it as the place. Now, like I said, I do not know as a person, what the level of damage that has been done or happens occasionally in terms of racial injustice in that city. I know that there's been an influx of Somali refugees in the area.
I think Devin's trying to get us to go to break.
Oh, we are. We're going to the minute. We got. I'll wind us in. He slowly winds it up. He knows what he's doing. He's a pro. So, this is not one of those cities where naturally, yes, blues is to Chicago, Richard, where we can consider that all the time, as an issue, like Chicago's, like Austin and Chicago or something like that. So that's why when the provocateurs came in, it stood out, I think, for a lot of people. When we're back at the top of the hour, let's dive into the Flynn stuff, because that's what this is all cover for as far as the White House goes. We'll be back. Yeah. So let me see. Like, we should be. And hey, everybody. And hey, yes.
Yeah, Hal, you're still coming in quiet, and Johnny, you're coming in really loud.
Okay, I will. I'll work on that. That's to you guys. Let's see, radio at Chicago. Let me check that. Yes, I see that mine is turned down relatively low, but it's
check
quiet.
1 2.
Yep.
Check a 1 2.
You seem.
Yeah, you're coming in really hot, Johnny.
I'll get just on my end.
That's how I do.
Okay. Is that a little better?
Check 1 2. Any better?
Hal, you sound good. Johnny's still really hot.
Okay. I brought him down. I don't know what that is.
Check 1 2.
Okay.
Check
Johnny,
1 2.
One more check, please, Johnny.
Check 1 2.
So much
Checking.
better. Perfect.
Yep.
Yay.
Yeah, I brought him down. I think there's a delay. Is what's happening in there. So
On the adjustment.
Yeah. So let's see.
We can now hear everyone at normal
for me,
volume.
and there you go. And then I think I'll make myself a little louder in there, and then it should be a little better. Might be too hot, but I'll fix it in the other area. I have like 3 meters that go in this. Yes, Maureen says Johnny is really hot. I agree. I mean, I think that's just a current. Yeah, Billy.
Oh my goodness, Maureen, you're making me blush.
Too hot.
Hi.
Too hot lady. Uh-oh, it's got a cat. There's a cat.
Yep. Did you hear her?
Oh yeah.
Even hotter now.
Even hotter with the kitty.
Oh, with the belly.
Yeah. Do you ever hold your kitty like this, like a tree?
No, they don't. First of all, Chud is too round for that to happen, and my arm needs to be wider. And the other 2 cats are too long. They're birders,
This
you know.
is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com.
Also, Hal, I don't know if you're taking calls, but you have 1 call right now.
Okay, we'll do that after the Flynn stuff. We'll see if that comes up or whatever. I'm just checking stuff. So, yeah.
Okay, all good. Just want to let you know.
Okay, cool. Are we back? What has happened? Oh no, we got a few minutes. Okay, I just heard. I heard the news behind you, so that was that. So, hi, chat room. Sorry. Woof. Man, was I just fixing stuff like crazy. I hate when that happens. We don't have a lot of those. We don't have as many as we used to. Certainly. You know what I mean? Like, we used to have a lot of those. We used to, it used to be just a nightmare of
A
those.
technical workshop.
Yeah, every single show. But now we have one every 5 weeks. That's like that, where I'm just
last
doing.
week was perfect.
Huh? I know, and the week
Last
before
week
was
was
fine too.
yeah.
Like this, it's the Russians. They're attacking me. Whenever the news gets really gnarly for Trump, apparently there's a spike in. I don't know, stuff doesn't work. Am I tired? I'm a little tired. Yesterday was Camden's birthday, and so we had presents, and we got to stay up a little bit later, and we got to watch a movie, and we had all the stuff that you do on your birthday. He was up early because of presents. So it was like the longest day on earth. And then it was great, though. And ice cream cake, which I just like. I don't do sugar a lot anyways. But when you eat like a slice of kid's birthday cake, which is an ice cream cake as well.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. Yeah.
That's on paper. I never liked the idea of ice cream cake. And then when presented with one, I cannot stop eating it.
Yeah. Well, it's cake a la mode installed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's usually artfully done, and the textures are pretty amazing.
That's right. It used to be, that's Howard the teeth. The teeth are great, Cosmic Rose. He's got two missing right here, two front teeth. And
that's right. I forgot there was a
my God.
tooth update.
Oh yeah, the portcullis is down and the gates have been ramrodded. the castle that is his mouth is completely open for business. Oh, look at the belly on that cat.
Yeah, she has like an anxiety licking thing, so she licks herself bald.
Aw. Why do you?
There's probably a little bit of allergies too.
Yeah, poor thing. She's a sweet thing. What's her name?
Flora.
Flora, and her brother Fauna, who's just great. And we found them hiding in the bushes. It's wonderful. We adopted them from a bush. It's wonderful.
She's purring.
I am taking calls. I will be taking calls. 773-763-9278. Yep. But
Thank you.
But the first thing I want to deal with is these Flynn things. So
this goes so deep, Hal, we're not going to let you talk about Flynn.
Yeah, that's right. So they're available if anybody wants to read along. I got these from like a link on CNN, but this is from documentcloud.org. They post this. As a matter of fact, what I'll do is I will copy this and I will tweet it right now.
I will tweet it.
Read along. Yeah. Let's see.
Scooby Dooby Dooby Boo. Flooby Dooby 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 Doo. Bibbidi beep beep beep. Wah wah wah.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Damn puss-faced little pimpstick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
So a lot of stuff happened yesterday, not the least of which was the president tweeting out that once the looting starts, the shooting starts, threatening protesters in front of the White House with guns like no one would believe, and young Secret Service members who want to use rioters as practice, presidential stuff.
Yeah.
And also my son's birthday, so I got to avoid a good portion of the news yesterday while this was happening, which is an incredible. It gives you a nice sense of perspective while stuff is going on, especially if you already care and you don't need to be taught to care. I think in the news, I think a lot of I can't speak for the true motivations of the right-wing media, but I can speak to their alleged motivations sometimes, which is to foment discontent, essentially, with government, which is a Putin plan and a Russian ploy for a long time. You are meant to believe you can't trust any part of your government so that you develop a constant distrust, so that even when people worth your trust are running, your your desire to vote and everything is undermined. So basically, like you chop down the tree of democracy with 1,000 cuts. If you start sawing at it with a giant timber saw, like they use in the in the Northeast to try and fell those giant old trees, people they notice the noise. It is much more like what it takes. It's a much more escape from Alcatraz kind of a ploy. You know what I mean? You got to do little bits all the time, and then by the time they wake up to the plan, you've already set it in motion. That's how that methodology works. The Russians aren't the only ones behind it. The Chinese aren't big fans of representative democracy. The Saudis hate it. There's plenty of people out there who want you to think that democracy is the problem and that America will never heal from its injuries, that it has an eternal sin and it will never get past it. And that feeling that it will never get past it will entrench people in the behavior on one side or the other. That's the goal. Division, in a permanent sense. So, what a great time when to release documents that you are legally obligated to release when you have literally flooded the airwaves with threats of gun violence and racist dog whistles, on your own Twitter feed. This is so. Unclassified, Director of National Intelligence, Washington, D.C. This is May 29th, 2020. This was the date of release. Friday night news dump on top of this dissembling, hyper garbage, chaotic crap, which, by the way, also plays into Trump's base. Let me just say for the record, Trump is a big fan of these riots.
Oh, yeah.
He's appreciating the Stephen Millers of the world are going, I told you they were violent. That's what this is about. They're gonna make people think that this is all black people acting up and burning their own businesses, play into that narrative, ratchet it up. That's part of the game. But it also draws fire away from the fact that these transcripts that Chuck Grassley, that Ratcliffe released to Chuck Grassley because he had to, not because he wanted to, basically explain why Mueller would be concerned and the FBI would be concerned with what Flynn was saying to the Russians and his. Okay, so let's just start. So the letter is from Ratcliffe. It starts there, Dear Chairman Grassley and Johnson, because Ron Johnson's the chairman of the Committee on Homeland Security. In response to bipartisan requests regarding the LTG Michael Flynn retired transcripts, please find the enclosed declassified documents. Now, granted, there's going to be a bunch of this too. If you look at the document right here, there's going to be a bunch of that. So declassified in quotes. Now there's a reason for this, and let me be abundantly clear. I understand why you classify documents. See the argument I made earlier about why people started wearing uniforms in the first place. Whatever the American people see, everybody sees. Everybody, including the bad guys. So just understand, you have to temper that balance of the access to material that we want people to have. It's why we have a representative government. It's why you vote. It's why you vote for people you trust, not for the worst pit bull you can send. No offense to pit bulls. They're lovely dogs when they're not tortured and mistreated. That you send a representative into office that you believe will tell you the truth within the best of their ability. That's, it matters to them. That's why you don't send in a businessman who failed at casinos. Who fails at casinos? Jesus. Anyways, okay. And it starts with a breakdown. It starts with if you're reading along, I just tweeted out the link. If you want to, all right. So if you can follow along at the documents, documentcloud.org thing that I posted or whatever. So this is from 12/23/2016. This is 2 days before Christmas 2016. After the election, before Trump has been sworn in, they're in the transition. Participants: to General Flynn, a follow-up call between General Flynn and Kislyak, Sergei Kislyak, former KGB, former FSB, now cretin who laughs at the killings of reporters and protesters. This in and of itself is, should be indicative. Okay. Pichelikov, which is, I guess, his assistant, calls General Flynn and asks if he can connect him with Ambassador Kislyak. Flynn replies, "Yes, please put him on." "This is General Flynn," Kislyak says. "Yeah, General, thank you for picking up my call. I just wanted, as a follow-up, to share with you several points. One, that your previous telephone call, I reported to Moscow, and it was considered at the highest level in Russia. Secondly, here we are planning, taking in account and rally your arguments to raise them, a proposal of an idea continued consultations in New York." Well, I don't know what he's referencing here, but I would like to say that in the first part of this, we're getting the calls between Kislyak and Flynn, right? This is what we're supposed to be getting. This is the transcripts we're supposed to be getting. These are the declassified transcripts of the calls. Now, most of what they discuss in here is most of what they discussed in it. There's no extra details, and certainly not entire paragraphs you couldn't have blacked out and said, oh, there was this call on this date beforehand that they also did a transcription of, but all of it's been redacted. This starts with him saying, thanks for the other calls. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The transcripts of these calls didn't start until this one. There were previous calls. By the way, remind yourself that not only is Kislyak conversing with him, and they start talking about stuff that's not within his legal ability to do and are in direct contradiction to the will of Congress and the current administration. I mean, let's be honest. You think McConnell would care? Merrick Garland, anyone?
No.
But in terms of this, there were other calls before this, before they started transcribing them. That right away, red flag. Okay, so he goes, your arguments raise a proposal idea of continued consultation in New York. I'm guessing at the UN. They're meeting at the UN, or they're talking about the Mayflower Hotel meetings. Again, remember those little secret gatherings. We will do it today to give time for working out something that would be maybe less controversial. Yeah, the ahem is in there. By the way, all the other transcripts, this is the summary of the transcripts. Then the actual transcripts follow.
Mm-hmm.
And every or is in there. Why is every or I mean, I say them because I'm flustered with audio stuff while I'm trying to do the show, and it gets really intolerable sometimes, and I apologize. I really do try to fight off my ums and uhs. It only becomes an issue when I'm also ice skating uphill against technology. That said, why do they transcribe every and Because you can encode in Morse code and other ways the number of uhs and ums per sentence. You understand what I'm saying? Like, that's the high level of how they transcribe these things. Because in the past, they've listened to innocuous conversations, and then somebody went, certainly does in shorts and longs in threes with breakups. Mm. It certainly sounds like Morse code to me. Not Morse code. That would be, Jungle Love. OEOEO is Morse code. Morse code. All right. He goes, Flynn says, okay, that's good news. Kislyak interrupts to continue with his points. Kislyak, secondly, if the orders will put in to vote, and I understand my colleagues tell me that Egyptians are not pressing for the vote, but maybe others. Flynn continues, and you know that the strategic goal is stability in the Middle East. That's the strategic goal. And between you and I, and you know this, and we know this, between Moscow and Washington. We will not achieve stability in the Middle East without working with each other against this radical Islamist crowd, period. I'm very adamant about that, and I want to make sure that you know, and then in the conversations we'll have in the future, if there is a common threat, he said, he almost said enemy, and he checked himself, common threat that we face, Kislyak, I agree with you, Flynn, I am still sickened by the murder of your ambassador to Turkey, and if Russia, Kislyak interrupts Flynn, General, if you allow me to continue, Literally, they're talking over each other. To complete my presentation of these points, so we will try to help to give additional time for the conversation on this issue. But if you put to a vote for historical reasons I explained to you, we cannot other than support it. Flynn, okay. Kislyak, that is something, that is part of the position that we've developed within countries in the region for a long period of time. But responding to your telephone call and our conversations, we will try to help postpone the vote and allow for consultations. So not only is he talking about, interrupting the sanctions that are in place and basically saying, don't retaliate, we're going to undo those. They will be gone. And the sanctions, by the way, that we're talking about, understand what these sanctions are. These sanctions are Russia can't bring in medical supplies. These aren't the kind of sanctions that Israel puts on the Palestinians a lot of times for fear that they're going to be smuggling in weapons. This isn't sanctions that we're going to put on them as far as how the state can spend funds at all. Like, most of these sanctions had entirely to do with rich people associated with the government spending their money elsewhere, or rich members of the government spending their millions and billions of dollars in places, or where they can get access to it, or where they can hide it, or where they can put it away. Understand that fact, that this phone call is not about the Russian people need bread and the United States is stopping them from having bread because, you know, the sanctions that we put on Russia are somehow even in league with the ones we have on Iran, for example, where they can't get office equipment, that kind of stuff. That's not what's happening. That's not what the sanctions around Russia are. And we can go over those if you'd like. But we got to take a break. These sanctions are about Putin and his rich buddies not being able to shuffle their cash around. By the way, you know there are laws against senators and government representatives using their insider knowledge for insider trading effectively to buy and sell stocks. And Loeffler and Burr are clearly guilty of this, in my opinion, and the DOJ has dropped all charges or investigation into them because they feel like either that's a can of worms or they've been asked to by the government, or they simply think they were just smart. They just heard something that anybody else would have heard and they just moved their money. There is an even bigger issue with this in that the president is in constant contact with rich Russians who have a ton of money in our stock market. And those folks get insider trading scoops that are, they don't even get bad news for. We got to take a break. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Yeah, Jim Flikowski said, except Burr, the investigation is still ongoing. This is true. And I have a theory about that. I think it's because Burr is older. I think Loeffler can be in office longer, so they're letting her keep office and stay where she is because they figure she'll be able to maintain her seat. Whereas Burr's older, and if they drum him out, they can get a younger, more psycho-conservative in there. Just like their court packing stuff. By the way, hi chat room. I'm now settling down in that things are kind of working again. So thanks for weathering that little storm with me while I tried to figure that part of it out. Are you cold?
Uh-huh.
Are you bastard?
Yeah, it got a little chilly here today.
I'm cooking in here. Huh?
It got a little chilly in here today.
That's so rude.
Let's see. It is 67 right now.
Oh, you rat. It's going to be 109 today.
What? Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting
flow in. Thanks, Prof. I do flow and crank very well. Yes, thanks, Natalie. I appreciate that. Thanks. And thank you, Can't Stop Lying, for keeping everybody informed and in the right place. I appreciate it. And thanks, Alex Jackson, for the super chat. In case I missed these, thank you, Jill Carter. Thank you, Christina F. That's just awesome. Thank you, Hal Vickery. Thank you, Joe Carter. Again, bless you. Yeah, we have a tonight.
Back in 60, Hal, 3 callers.
Excellent. Tonight is the rehearsal for Sexy Liberal, the virtual Sexy
Oh,
Liberal
neat.
show. Love you back. Thank you. Oh, wait. Oh, thank you, Christina F.
So what's the rehearsal going to be like? Is it just like
Well,
a
we have to
staging?
coordinate like roll-in sketches and pieces of video and stuff. It won't be the same next week because
okay.
it's so because it's timely. So like I'm going to shoot a sketch for it next Friday that I'm going to roll in. I've just got to practice rolling a clip in today and going, okay, here's the piece of this, just to see if it rolls in right. And, because we're using relatively new technology, and God knows I love that. There he is.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Oh, Lady B, we love you. If you're listening, Lady B,
Lady
wherever
B.
you are, we love you.
And when you say per capita, this many per capita is just like per capita relative to what?
So the president, who's been handling all this very well,
You have nobody guarding your potatoes.
and has not had a moment where he's missed a beat. He's sharp as a
We're
tack.
honored to have with us today our amazing Vice President Mike Pence and his wonderful wife Carrot.
And who can forget
Once
the old
it was
classic?
reluctantly aroused. It was hard to get it aroused, and it is hard to get it aroused, but we got it aroused.
The president who is saying that that Biden is missing a step and can't hang on to a conversation and all this kind of. Thank you, Green Seeker. Oh my God, appreciate that. Yeah, random carrots in the chat room. It's all carrots all the time. The president who says everyone else is missing a step doesn't even know where he heard the term once the looting starts, the shooting starts.
Oh, really?
Which I thought he had one of the greatest memories of all time. Does he not point at his head and say it's the greatest thing that ever existed all the time? Am I wrong on this one?
No, that's what he does.
So there is a part to this. Let me call this back up, and we'll get to the callers in a moment. 773-763-9278. We'll probably get them at the after the half hour break, if that's cool to everybody who's waiting online. Appreciate you guys hanging in there. Flynn wants to convey the following to Moscow. Do not allow this administration to box us in right now. Kislyak says they have conveyed it very clearly. So depending on what actions they take over the current issue on cyber stuff, where they're looking like they're going to dismiss some members of the Russians out of the country, I understand all that, and I understand that the information that they have and all that, but I ask Russia to do is to not, if anything, I know you have to have some sort of action to only make it reciprocal. Don't go any further than that. You have to, because I don't want us to get into something that has to escalate, tit for tat. Do you follow me? Kislyak says he understands what Flynn is saying, but Flynn might appreciate the sentiments that are raging in Moscow. Flynn says, I know, believe me, I do. I very much appreciate it. Yeah, I totally appreciate how upset people in Moscow must be. My heart bleeds for them that they were caught manipulating our election, and now they're all upset that the spies they have stationed in the country are getting broomed. Boo hoo. I mean, I get diplomatic talk in this situation, but this sounds like he really does feel worse for Russia than he does for the United States. But I really do not want us to get into the situation where everybody goes back and forth and everybody had to be a tough guy here. We don't need that right now. We need cool heads to prevail, and we need to be very steady about what we're going to do, because we have absolutely a common threat in the Middle East. Kislyak agrees. Now when the FSB and GRU are sanctioned and Kislyak asks himself, does it mean that the U.S. is not willing to work on terrorist threats? Kislyak posed the question. Flynn says yes. Kislyak said he heard Flynn and he will try to get people in Moscow to understand. There's so many missing words even in the summary of this. It's odd. Yeah. It's almost like the summary came from Russia. I honest to God. I mean, every time we hear a story about what was said in a meeting, so much of it comes from Russia when it comes to Trump and these folks. But then they get to the word for word of this part of it. They go through the line by line after that whole part. he says, he puts him through. There's a point, and I think there's the issue with, by the way, the Russian and Turkey. That's one of the reasons Flynn was put on the call, because of his relationship with Turkey, as it were. Well, we will try to give additional time for a conversation on this issue, but if it's put on vote for historical reasons, as I explained to you, Flynn, Kislyak, we cannot vote other than to support it. Flynn goes, okay. Kislyak goes, that is something that is part of the position that we have developed with the countries in the region for a long period of time. But responding to your telephone call and our conversations, we will try to help to postpone the vote. I'm feeling so much better about the number of ums and uhs I say during a normal day. Holy smokes. Now, again, this is a habit that foreigners often have when talking to Americans, because they've been told that our attention span is so short that if you stop making noise, we will walk away. And a lot of people, when they don't know the language, and Americans do this too when they've learned a language and they go abroad, is that you drag words out so that you don't think I'm finished saying what I'm saying. That's a habit. So I don't fault him necessarily for speaking like this. Flynn has no excuse, but okay. Flynn, okay, that's good. Kislyak, we took on board your UI that you also wanted to have some time. Okay. Okay, that is something we will try to do. Okay, that's great, Ambassador. That's all we can ask for at this point in time. Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you very much. Happy Christmas and New Year's. Yeah, same to you. And please call me anytime, okay? Same here. Please enjoy your family. It's so important right now. Thank you. Okay, so click.
Family is so important.
I love the top of this next one. And we got a minute before break. When we come back, we'll take our calls. 773-763-9278. Unknown mail. Russian embassy, ambassador's office. They've got it, like we don't know who answered the phone. Yeah, this is General Flynn. And it says in brackets, he may be using a speakerphone. So we don't know who's listening in is the point. That tells the person reading the transcript that other people were involved.
Yeah.
Unknown male. Yes, I will put ambassador online, sir. Okay, thank you. Unknown male. Thanks. We'll get to, all right, I'm going to go to the rest of this when we come back from the break because we're right at the 30 mark. So we'll be back right after this with more of this and your calls. 773-763-9270. Sounds like Sam Cedar's ums. That's right. I don't do that many. I'm very proud. I only have that many when my entire computer system is failing around me. Now it is currently fine, and you'll notice the ums dry up like crazy. I'm very proud of that fact. I like the fact that I'm a decent public speaker. I've worked on it a little bit.
Sure.
And I'm always working on it.
And you've got all the best words.
It's true. I just don't use them because people won't understand them. We'll be back. I'll confuse you. I don't want Johnny to go, what was that? What is that? What is that? Yeah, I'm on, where's the page numbers on these suckers? You can't, in this document cloud, it's page 7. Documentcloud.org. You can't stretch the pages using, maybe their app allows it. But there you go. Yeah, it's so much easier when you're typing in a chat room to not and And by the way, thank you, Mark Ash. Appreciate it for the tech fund. That's so great. And Green Sinker, I know you meant to send more. I appreciate the follow-up. Great. Yeah, the computer's working fine now. It doesn't seem to be too choppy. There was some hash up. I gotta say, I'm suspicious. I always get suspicious about which piece of software is really the problem child. And right now it's loop back for me. Yes, I'm on Twitch. We're currently on Twitch. We have 6 people watching on Twitch. Hi. Hi, Twitch folks. You guys can bit and emote and all that kind of stuff. Am I a little passive aggressive? Right. Yeah, we are too. I'm excited about the launch as well. We're all planning on watching it. Are you whispering to me, Johnny? That you? That's really adorable. I don't even know how you do that. Is that in the?
It's in Skype. It's in the app.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it doesn't allow me to do that. I don't think, unless it's in here.
Oh, maybe not as a. I don't know.
Show reactions. There we go. Yes. Oh, I see. Yeah. Gotcha.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. I only have a few, though. You look like you have way more than I do.
No, that was about it.
Okay. All right.
I never did get your video back.
This one's just pervy.
It is. Oh.
Yeah, 316. Yeah, we got 316 in here. Thanks for jumping streams, guys. I really appreciate that.
Back in 60, and your phone lines are full, Hal.
As you do.
Yay.
We have. Is it 11:15 is the launch? I know it's. Hold on. The family will know. We'll ask them. Hold on. Babe, what time's the launch? Is it 2 hours? What time is it? 12:22, 12:30? Okay, excellent. 12:22 or 12:30. Okay, so we'll stream that separately. Thanks. Yeah, I have a stain on my shirt or something. This deodorant just isn't working out. You got to stay clean for the house. Oh yeah, there'll be some potential trolls. By the way, Devin, if I say thanks for the call,
hang up on him.
Yeah.
Got it.
If I say I appreciate the call, that's different. But if I say thanks for the call,
thanks for the call means drop him. Got it.
Yeah, right. Because otherwise it'll just to be a prattle.
I'm Dick Kay from Back on the Beat, and here is the Mega Worldwide Radio Program with Hal Sparks.
So, speaking of phone calls, we're going to take calls in just 1 second. But there is a point in this chat, this chit chat between Kislyak and Flynn, which goes on for multiple calls, where Kislyak basically says,
the chit chat a-hole.
And there's a point where he goes, once you were interested in the issue of the Middle East and you called me on that issue, is on page 7. There are a bunch of situations where he's not referencing the other calls that we have transcripts of. That's the most concerning part of these transcripts, is the lack of other transcripts. Because we're not going to get any transcripts of the business calls between Russia and the Trump organization. We're not going to get transcripts of the campaign's calls with Russia that are coordinated with these calls. Hey, Brett, what's happening in the chat room? Okay, so let's take these calls, and I'll get back to this too. But they're talking about the dates by which they will start instituting policies in the White House, regardless of what Congress has voted around sanctions in these chat rooms. So I recommend everybody read these, especially the maggots that are out there listening, and understand that this is why the FBI went, if they're saying this in the transcribed part, what are they saying? We need to talk to this guy and find out what was in the other conversations that we don't have transcriptions of, because they are referencing calls that Kislyak loves. He loves what they talked about. He couldn't be more excited. So the FBI, if let's say you call Scarface and you've called him enough times where the FBI has gone, Jesus, this number calls Scarface all the time. I don't think it's a misdial. I don't think these are all butt dials. I think after 5 or 10, maybe we can say the guy was like, I didn't know that number. It used to be a pizzeria place I loved, and this weird guy kept answering, and I don't like tacos, so I stopped, blah, blah. So, that's your excuse. After about 50 calls, you start going, you know what? Maybe we need a tap on this dude too. So you go to a judge and you go, hey, can we get a tap on this other phone? Because it calls Scarface day in and day out at all hours. And he goes, okay, you can have it. And you start getting that, and you're only able to transcribe the calls from that point forward involving that person. They are redacted from all the other transcriptions previous. If you have caught him on audio recording for it, temporarily, because you don't have a tap to record all calls or to maintain all calls, just the ones that are with known associates that you're also tracking, those kind of things. And that's in a U.S. drug trial. If you do it in, if it's foreign intervention, you could pretty much listen in on all of it, but you can't keep all of it. There's all kinds of back and forth rules about breaking laws in the states and over there. But in the course of this, under FISA, you go to the judge, you go, hey, this guy keeps calling this guy. Can we start keeping track of these calls? And they go, yeah, that's kind of a worrisome thing. And then you get the transcriptions, and you're like, oh, he's referencing other calls where he's promising things that are against the law. He's talking about, the jackal showing up at a certain corner waiting for a bag that will have the item in it so that someone else can take an elevator to nowhere. We're getting a little worried about that. We'd like to bring this dude in and ask him who the jackal is, what's in the bag, what the package is, and what do they mean by the elevator to nowhere? Like, we need to kind of know these things to find out if it's a single assassination, if they're talking about a birthday gift for his brother-in-law, or we have to worry about a bomb during a marathon. These are starting to get concerning. That's what happened with Flynn. And then they started transcribing this. They started realizing, oh my God, we have all these calls about this nonsense going on that's all illegal. They're saying stuff, he's saying stuff that is currently illegal. And they're talking about other calls. They're talking about other conversations they have had. That's why the FBI needed to investigate this. This is why Mueller was so concerned about Flynn. And also, this is exactly why Flynn lied to the FBI, because he knew about the other calls and the conversations that he'd been having, and that he was lying, and that he was working as a foreign agent for Turkey and in Turkey's interest, and why he was bartering in the interests of Turkey to not have Russia attack Turkey because Turkey was his employer. So he was messing around in international stuff that our country was involved in against the needs and wants of the American people to protect his client for the betterment of Russia's needs. Like, there's so much in this that is worth prosecuting. They let him plead down. He was cooperating, which is why they lying to the FBI is the only charge against him, because he was giving up other stuff. Because you get the low-level drug dealer that's talking to Scarface all the time, and you say to this guy, look, we'll plead you down to possession, which is nothing. You'll do 12 months for possession, and you'll probably get out in 6. But who's the guy paying you? Because he killed somebody. We'd rather have the guy that killed somebody than your stupid ass. So, what do you say? That's what deals are. That's what this is. Flynn got a deal. Flynn got to plead down to nothing. He wasn't guilty of nothing. They just gave him the ability to lie. It's gross. So, all right, let's take some calls. I have no doubt we have plenty to talk about today, certainly. So let's take them in order. Who do we have first, Evan?
First, we have Kate out in Chicago.
Excellent. Hi, Kate. Welcome. Go ahead.
Hello?
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 We hear you. Can you hear me? New equipment.
Hello?
I guess so. Chicago, new equipment. They can't hear me. I don't think so.
Oh.
Go ahead.
I can hear you. Hello?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Of course. That's what the whole hello
I can
part
hear
was.
you.
Yes, go ahead. Excellent. We can hear you. You're fine. Go ahead.
Okay. We really appreciate your show. We look forward to it every week to hear the best insight and information on what's going on.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. I just wanted to ask you if you know anything about the policeman who killed George, and the two of them knowing each other. I just heard once on the news, and I'm surprised more hasn't been said about this, that they were bouncers at the same place for many, many years. And
17 years. Yeah. That's why the kind of standard issue with this story in terms of where the rest of us are dealing with this is, while racial issues notwithstanding, which certainly exist in especially younger black men interactions with police, and it's very concerning to the politic, and we are all sensitive to it. There may be something on top of this that is personal, which, by the way, would change the third-degree murder charge against him, because there's an element of premeditation if he had a grudge against this dude, and if Chauvin had always had a problem with George, and he runs up and look, it's George, and I'm going to show George because George showed me at some point. That in and of itself is another aspect of the crime that may be attached to his own personal racism. It may be just little man syndrome or something that he has. There's a mix of things here, and it could and by the way, whatever that is, by the way, does not dilute the fact that the other three cops stood there while his knee was on that man's neck for 8 minutes while he was already cuffed. That doesn't change that fact. That's still just as horrifying. That doesn't change that element, right? But there may be another layer of personal grudge or something going on, and we will only find that out at trial. And in that,
I really hope that's investigated, and it could be very complicated. It could be that George knew something that all four of them didn't want out for some reason. I mean, who knows?
Well, that's why we have trials. That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. That is why we have trials and why we don't extrajudicially kill anyone in any circumstance, because we need to know what they know and what other people knew about the situation before it happens. Investigations are always important simply because you get to eliminate even the floating thoughts outside of it. So you find out, let's say Chauvin was charged on day one with first-degree murder, and immediately a trial started. And on normal paper, in any normal circumstance, that kind of a killing qualifies as a third-degree murder. But in this circumstance, because of the political expeditiousness and the worry about riots and whatnot, they rush this in. What happens is that twofold negatives can come from this. One is everybody who was a supporter of Chauvin, who believes there was some sort of other story going along, like you would, if you bring up that they used to work together or something. If they were all involved in some sort of drug hustle or something, that myth, I have no evidence that that's happening. I'm saying this is a myth that could pop up around that story, not unlike what you're talking about. That floats, gains steam, and eventually it looks like a cover-up that leads around. And all the people who supported, Chauvin's side of things or thinks he was railroad or whatever, that ratchets up. They're not believing that black men have anything to worry about when they are confronted by the police. And then that adds fuel to that side of the fire. The other problem you have is that now any restraint death going forward that is likened to that, a black man is in a fight with someone else, he restrains that person until the police arrive. That time period between the 911 call where he's holding this person during that time and the cops arrive, that person perishes. That now is no longer manslaughter or third-degree murder because the person was restrained when they were choked to death. That is now first-degree murder because we've established a standard. That's all the concerns that are in this. And it is not wrong to be concerned about those kind of things and still understand that what Chauvin did, in my estimation, was murder. The degree of murder with which it is more about how you treat other people in similar circumstances, not the person themselves. That's why we have so many derivations. It's why we don't go with the biblical "thou shalt not kill," because clearly we wouldn't have a military if that was the case. So those things all matter. So I appreciate you bringing that part of the story up. And it is also why we have trials. And as frustrating or as enlightening as trials can be at different times, when you have Mark Furman being brought on Fox News during the riots to talk about what's going on, clearly people walk away from these situations with whatever message they want. So the more you pay attention to the details and the more you cross the T's and dot the I's and batten down the hatches around this stuff, the better it is for everyone long term. When you rush it, or there's a ton, especially in high profile cases, there's so much politics involved in it, both directions. For the health of everyone involved, slow walking these things and making sure that every detail is covered is the healthiest thing for society long term, as frustrating as it can be. So we may find out stuff about that. We may absolutely find out that this was a bro murder. These guys knew each other, had a chest bumping grudge from 15 years ago. And one of the reasons why Chauvin became a cop is because he's got a chip on his shoulder and he carries that around, and he got in a beef with somebody else and he wanted to make it hurt this time and was unaware that dealing with George Floyd, as big as George was, that he thought there's no way I can really be hurting, and this guy's just lying to me when he says he can't breathe. He's just messing with me, and I'm just going to keep him there and make it hurt because I don't think I can kill him, and then suddenly he's dead. Which is why I think the third-degree murder charge happened. I think that's really what was more than likely going on. But this may be two dudes with a beef, and the whole world is set on fire temporarily because these guys didn't work a beef out from 15 years ago. If that's the case, that does not change, by the way, the extrajudicial killing of black men in our society and how that needs to be handled, the behavior of police, the impact on police, and insofar as there's the psychology and the psychological effects on them working in very high crime, very dangerous zones, and how they view people. I've heard multiple cops saying that the hardest part of their job is not becoming racist over time because of the areas that they're in. I've heard this from a black cop who dealt with this, felt himself distancing himself from black people in general because of the area that he policed. There is a section of downtown Los Angeles, and it is wedging on East LA between Gage and the 110, which is the harshest, most difficult part of Los Angeles. Black people and Hispanic people are the most victimized in those areas, are the ones who call the police the most often, who need the police the most often because of that neighborhood, who live on the fringes of that, by the way. They live in what used to be South Central, which used to be, the straight out of Compton storyline, the tough part that we used to talk about. That has largely, for the most part, gentrified compared to what it was in the 90s with black people and families living in there. But the section that isn't bleeds into their community the most and bleeds into East LA, which is a highly Hispanic community the most. And between the two of them, they're the ones who need the most police support. And the police that work in those areas are largely minority police officers. They're black and Chinese. That's a big section, and Hispanic, obviously. So they interact with these groups and they bring that damage home. They look at their own people differently, and that's the thing that they fight. They get nervous about that part of it. George Floyd even put out a video where he was saying, why do these young brothers act this way? You can watch it online. I'm not going to paraphrase or try, but he was concerned about this kind of violence because he deals with this, because he's the kind of guy and what he was accused of doing was a nonviolent crime.
Yes, of course.
And so there is no excuse. There is no excuse.
Yes, and I just wanted to say,
go ahead. Yeah.
Whatever the situation is and whatever we may find out the truth, hopefully, what was going on. But the policeman would never have risked that if George had been white. And after he was unconscious, he kept his knee on his neck for 2 more minutes.
Yes,
I understand. He would never, whatever kind of feud he was having with this person, if the person had been white, he wouldn't have done that. In public?
Not yet. Well, that's the interesting part too about the the public part of this, and we will, like I said, more information must come out as we go forward. There is I'm looking up the current statistics right now. The number of 2019 so far, I believe, had the, let's see, looking at these years. So 2017 had the highest number of police shootings. And the number of white people shot by police in 2017 was 457. The number of let's see, and I'm looking at the graph is really hard to read in terms of this. The number of black people was 223. The number of let's see, Hispanic people 179, and other was listed as 44. And then there's a whole section of unknown, meaning more than likely mixed race or lack of categorization in that. There are, the issue that often comes up is that there are twice as many white people shot by cops every year than there are black people, but there are more than twice as many white people in the country than there are black people. Black people are 13 to 16% of the population. And yet
we gotta take a break.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, yeah, I rode the break. I apologize. Goodness gracious. I appreciate the call. This is what happens. I get carried away. I got to learn that Stephanie Miller trick of just going, one sentence and you're gone, but I can't do it. I appreciate your call. I think the flattery got the best of me. I appreciate it. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT, WCPT820.com, infotainmentwars.com. Feel free to support the show via Patreon, PayPal, Super Chat. There's even a physical address, although that scares me in a Kaczynski kind of a way. We'll be back. It's funny, because I do have a physical address for mailing stuff to or whatever, and I'm not worried for me. I'm worried about the people at the PO box place. And I'm relatively.
What do you think people are going to send you?
Well, I don't know. But I operate. You have to understand. Like, I operate on the fact that I love everybody. I'm very proud of the breadth and width of my fans and my friends. You know what I mean? Of the human beings that I interact with, both at shows and as friends. I feel like the linchpin of almost every group on the planet. I am totally cool. Like, I'm glad that there are no negative interactions amongst those groups. Like, it's cool. It's a great thing. And and as a general human being, I love people. That's my first. I default to that.
Back in 60, Hal.
Thank you. That said, and I'm blitzing on her name. That the very first that girl who was on the sitcom who was shot by a stalker who just decided to show up at her door.
Yeah, my sister Sam.
Yeah, right. That's always in my head. It's always there. It's always got to be there. And and during Queer as Folk,
it does.
During Queer as Folk, I mean, we got dozens of death threats. I got the worst of them because I was I did more press about it than anybody else.
Yeah.
And it's just this weird hitch in your get along. It's not, Rebecca Schaefer. Thank you guys. It's always there. It's this little, it's not quite PTSD level, but it's a slight haunting that you're aware of. You have to be aware of.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Now time for the happy ending. Yay!
That's right. The happy ending is that I rolled through that last break or whatever, and we got time for only a couple more calls. So let's grab another call, 773-763-9278. I hope everybody's excited to watch the NASA launch today. It's super great. Okay, who do we have, Devin?
Billy from the chat room.
Billy! Huh. Yay!
Oh, Billy.
And no, I will not flatter you today.
Oh, come on. You always do.
Not even a little.
Just by you flatter me by showing up in the chat room. I'm so honored to have you as part of the group every time. So there you go. So how about that? I flattered you.
Up with that one.
Worked, yeah.
Go ahead.
All right,
Go
thank
ahead.
you for your
I
call.
want to get to my matter really quick here for
Sure.
Every time we get a Democratic nominee for the nomination is settled, the first thing that comes out is a few people of the black celebrity area start asking, well, what are you going to do for us? We've heard that the Democratic Party just leaves blacks behind. They take us for granted. And so you got to offer us something. Our problem here is the system is broken right now. You can't get to anything. I think the major thing about the South Carolina vote and the other votes for Joe Biden that put him in is people recognize we got to fix the system before we'll get any kind of justice or anything pursued that is necessary. For example, we got this Floyd case. Well, right now, the Justice Department doesn't pursue consent decrees anymore. They won't investigate pattern practices. And if you're talking about the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department doing something, they're looking for discrimination against whites. There's nothing going on there.
Right.
So we just need to get our system fixed. We need to reboot it, just like you had to reboot your system earlier.
Right.
That's the only way we're going to be able to fix this thing.
Well, I will say
like
this.
Biden is somebody who knows where stuff is to fix.
Right. That's right. He's, and he can be trusted to understand, like, he knows to some degree to, use the quote, where the bodies are buried in terms of who amongst the, are functional in our, in our democracy and who are not, who are working actively against and who are just, sticks in the mud. And there's a difference between the two. And if you can't differentiate the two and all you can do is make enemies, then effectively you end up in a situation where Mitch McConnell controls the Senate, they stack the courts, and they will guarantee that if Ruth Bader Ginsburg has to step down, they will be replaced with someone to the right of Scalia. And that in and of itself is the end of, forget whatever the Democrats do for you is going to be undone in a right-wing lawsuit. So I appreciate you calling so much. Thank you guys, everybody, for joining us today. Appreciate all the callers. Everyone we get to you. It was just the tech thing kind of bumped everything. It was a day. But I appreciate you guys. We're going to have a little bit of a post show afterwards, and then we'll talk launch and all that kind of stuff. Love you guys. We'll see you next week. We're here every Saturday. Stick around for Dick K after us. Yeah.
All right, Hal. I will see you next week.
Thanks so much. Thanks.
Thanks for rolling with us,
guys.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for riding with that. Yeah, so the number of, let's see, the City Lab. I want to my lifetime risk of injury per 100,000. Yeah, so in the per 100,000 rate,
per capita relative to what?
If there's any kind of a.
And when you say per capita, this many per capita is just like per capita relative to what?
Many per capitas. I don't understand that.
Based on the number of caps that people are wearing, is this an anti-MAGA thing? Let's see. There's so much of a deep dive into this. Michigan State did a whole study on, on racial disparity in shootings and stuff, and you can pretty much track the race of a generalized area to the number of the people in that area who are killed. We don't tend to kill people who are different in areas most of the time.
Yeah.
Black people are not killed by police in white areas. White people are not killed by police in black areas. Chinese people are not killed by police in black areas or white, like that kind of thing. It's that's one of the ongoing factors that we deal with. And what'll ultimately happen is, it is a societal growth thing that we are, in fits and starts moving forward in, because we had periods that were worse and periods that were better. And a lot of times now the problem is with social media is that when there's anything, you can manipulate the circumstance to ratchet it up if you are not a team player, if you're not on that side. I worry about saying this just because I'm worried about if a white provocateur shows up in a BLM shirt and a white person who really cares about Black lives shows up in a BLM shirt, how do you tell the difference? You know what I mean? It's the misuse of the uniform theory again.
Yeah.
And so if you start beating up any white person who shows up on the side of protesters because you think they might be instigating, that's why you do marches and sit-ins and all that kind of. That's why that started. That's one of the reasons why, you know, King and others like him and Gandhi said you can't do normal, you know, raids and riots and uprisings. They just don't work like they used to.
No.
They can be taken advantage of by the other side as an excuse, and that's ultimately why, you know, that's what Manafort was trying to do. Yeah, great call, Billy, by the way. That's what Manafort was trying to do. Manafort was one of the guys who suggested to Konstantin Kilimnik that they put agent provocateurs, they put snipers on the roofs and agent provocateurs in the Ukrainian protesters crowd, get them to start throwing stuff, and they coordinated this stuff. It wasn't even like loosely done. These were coordinated with the government. These folks walked in, they throw fire bombs and other stuff, and then at a certain time, those dudes all left. And the fire, you know, the cars were on fire. People were already, you know, some cops had fired back, thinking that those were not, because they weren't in on it. They weren't in the need to know, right. And then that's when the killings started. And it's always a danger when you put one of those things up. That's why, and this goes back to the honor of being a cop and the honor of protesting. It's the very fact that you can be killed in the line of duty that we attach to the honor that we give to police officers.
Yep.
If we get to the point where police officers would rather kill anybody than be in danger themselves, even if that person doesn't deserve it, then it removes that threat of death from them entirely because they're an overwhelming military force in that situation, and therefore it also takes the honor with it. If protesters branch out beyond the meaning of the protest and start destroying private property that actually is owned and cared for by the people who are supposed to benefit from the protest, then the honor of protest goes out the window. Hence, quiet marches, sit-ins, being arrested, chaining yourself to a fence, those kind of things. And there are a bunch of people, I'm sure, who are going, it's not enough, it just doesn't. It is enough. And because that's what the other side wants you to think.
No.
The vast majority of people, I mean, without fail, I have yet to find a single person, and I've checked all the right-wing sites who are pulling the George Floyd was a thug and he resisted arrest storyline. You know what I mean? You hear that with some people. You know what I mean? With Ahmaud Arbery, the video starts with him charging the guys with a gun instead of running away. He wasn't shot running away, he was shot charging them. They're going to mince around that and say, you know, and by the way, what do you do if you think you're going to be shot? Is always my question. If it's nothing but field and these guys have long guns, you know you're not going to make it if you run away and they just shoot you. And what, you're going to hope somebody investigates after you're shot in the back?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? You're going to hide behind a vehicle, try to charge the person who's trying to kill you. Especially if you've been told by the media time and time again that all people do is hunt black people and that most people are against you. And you know, that's the media storm problem that I always have. That when you ratchet up this story and you make it look like a problem that's real and that exists is now everywhere, what you've told people is that in a situation where they're in a house where there's a kitchen fire and they need to get out of the house, you've told them the roof is on fire, the floor is on fire, the basement's on fire, and there's fire outside the windows. How are they going to act and what are they going to do in that situation? I'm not running over Dick Kay's time. I'm not on the radio anymore, John. Dick Kay's on the radio.
I know.
Yeah, don't worry about that. That's my concern that I always come to in these situations, is that if you tell people, you have to tell people where the fire is so the fire can be put out. If you say out of fear or intent that the fire is where it is not. Bill Barr's on live right now. Is he talking about this stuff? Hold on. I'll see if I can find it. God knows I'm not going to enjoy what he has to say. But it's crucial that, you know, if you have a cause, your behavior be higher than that of your enemy, and you take great care that they can't take advantage of your situation and use it for their ends. And that's what's happened in this situation. And by the way, what if we didn't start the fire? Rocky Mountain Mike, you're always just farming for songs.
Yeah, man.
Aubrey was hunted down and murdered. I agree. Although the issue that I have is that the video starts with at the beginning of him running in. That's why they arrested the dude who filmed it, because I want to see the part that led up to that. You know what I mean? All of it, everything you have on. And if he's just filming the part of it, then well, I'm sure I don't have any respect for what Barr said in this situation. So I appreciate you letting me know. The point I'm trying to make is not about the situation itself. It's about how the situation is extrapolated to affect other situations like it. That's where my care lies. Because you can have genuine outrage about a genuine situation that can be weaponized against you in a situation that isn't genuine.
Yeah.
And then it waters down the reality of it. It is effectively the situation where you have, well, I mean, if you look at the Me Too movement, any false charges are incredibly damaging, not just to the person they're making the false charge against, which is horrible, because society should vilify rapists and sexual assaulters. So that person is put in a position where they are forever tainted with this false charge. But it's also very damaging because ultimately people will start tapping the brakes when people come forward. We didn't get to the point where we didn't listen to women immediately. Look at the Salem witch trials. Salem witch trials were young girls coming forward and pointing out witches because they didn't like them, and they were able, I mean, that's how that ball started to roll. They weaponized the religious beliefs of the people around them to get rid of people they didn't want. And then that was taken advantage of by preachers who didn't want the pagans and the midwives who were practicing what is effectively early science that was raising, lowering the infant mortality rate. They didn't want that competition. If you're making money off faith healing, you don't want anybody that actually has a working cure. So, yeah, started with Mean Girls? Yes. This was a big part of it. There was, jealousy and all these kind of things that worked themselves out in small communities and then started blowing up into these horrible things. And they only ratcheted down after everybody in the entire town recognized that they had been complicit in multiple murders of innocent people. For reasons, by the way, at the time, that their deeply held beliefs had taught them were legitimate. Their own goodness was weaponized against them in that situation. So on another note, how long are the astronauts sitting in the capsule before launch? Well, considering they sat in it for hours yesterday, God knows.
Yeah, I felt bad for them.
Like an hour and a half. I don't. You're going to sit in that capsule. You're going to space. Get used to it. Hunker down. The Apollo guys would go, these short timers. That thing looks like a spa.
But I mean, I wanted them to get the juice of the takeoff.
Yeah, sure. But I also didn't want them to get the juice of, oh no, something came loose.
No, that'd be horrible.
Yeah, I'm not for that. I'm always, like all the cameras in it even make me, again,
I think we're ready for another national tragedy to divide us more.
Oh, God. That's because it's flat. The Earth is flat. There's a dome overhead. The moon doesn't exist. And they have to kill everybody to keep us off of the moon because the dark side of the moon is all full of aliens who paint the sky every morning. Oh, my God. Like the Q crowd and the flat earthers. By the way, can I just say for the record, I'm this close to not believing any conspiracy theory ever again. Like there are a couple of them that I have to be honest, I'm on the edge of. I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting. I'm not going to change my behavior towards my fellow man about it. But I'm at the point where I'm like, these just sound like they were ratcheted up by people to make everybody fight.
Yep. About
nothing. Because ultimately the discussion about whether or not they're aliens, whether they had contact with the U.S. government, whether or not we landed on the moon, whether or not 9/11 was an inside job, all those kind of things are ultimately, depending on your access to information, are like I said about the Vosh and what was the there's this like libertarian dude who debated, these two YouTubers debated or whatever, and I was like, I jumped in on it to like see what these debates are about, and it was like two guys at Comic-Con in competing costumes arguing about what butterfly farts smell like. It was the most useless, and getting enraged about it. Neither one of them had a solution. Both of them were just talking in circles. It was just garbage, and it would change nothing about the big. Robin in our chat room says Bigfoot was an inside job. That's the one I'm okay with. That, you know, the point I'm trying to make is that, like, once you have something like that, that should be our. I just I just made that up, Halvickery. I just thought, of course they fart. Don't they have digestive systems? I don't know that they have. They have rectums, I think, because insects leave behind, you know, waste product. Maybe they don't, but either way, I'm very impressed. I just like the idea of two people arguing about what butterfly farts smell like. So the point I'm trying to make is that whatever legitimate gripe or situation you have, you must guard against people who will just take advantage of the fact that an argument exists at all, and will try to ratchet it up. Because by ratcheting it up, they add to it. This like goes to the trans argument. You know, are there legit trans people and what are called trans trenders? Of course, because there are black people and there are Rachel Dolezals. Does that mean that should define how you behave towards the black people you interact with? Or if you meet someone who's clearly insane and thinks they can change their race by tanning and dyeing their hair, that you should not treat them with the delicacy of the fact that you're talking to someone who's clearly nuts. And there's a difference, right? There are people who are real, and then there are people who are crazy but think they are that thing. That's fine. If I ever met Napoleon Bonaparte, I wouldn't go, I don't believe you because I met a guy who once thought he was Napoleon Bonaparte. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of thing. So in talking about these issues, you must take care to watch the periphery of people who will just try to ratchet up the discontent simply for the goal of discontent. And that's all the Russians have done. And it's the cheapest thing. It is the cheapest weapon in the world, is getting people to punch themselves in the face. I mean, you could argue that if you want to believe in some sort of New World Order BS, or you want to, believe that Europe in forming the UN was trying to take over the world with the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and all that stuff, and they pitted the U.S. and Russia against each other for this war, the Cold War, and they want us to fight all the time, and that's why this is all happening. And the end result was what? Russia blew up huge chunks of its country with nuclear weapons, and we did nothing but bomb our own territory. There were tons of nuclear weapons dropped on the United States and Russia. We did it to ourselves, like two playground bullies just punching themselves in the face to show off how tough they were. So at this point, whenever like I said, there's 8 minutes of George Floyd, the video around him, and the justifiability of any kind of restraint of him in that form drains after 60 seconds. It is against police procedure. It is a violent act, and it is ongoing. It is, it is clear that the officer knows he's on his neck, not his back. It went on far too long. Like, I am totally comfortable with what I saw in that video, even if there was resisting arrest beforehand. The man was cuffed and on the ground. You see what I'm saying? This is not one of those situations where a gun was drawn after a pickup fight after a stop. That's not even in the ballpark of that kind of an argument, right?
No.
But in most cases, when I see a video online or I see a trend start about what somebody said, especially now, I immediately, my fallback is it's 80% bots that I'm seeing pushing this up, and there's more information to it. And I care more about my own people, my fellow humans, to take for granted that there are more villains in the world than there are.
Yeah.
Sparks, there were 3 people sitting on him, not one shown from the other angle. Yes, I know. I know they were restraining him and keeping him from getting up. That's what I'm saying. The other 3 cops that were complicit, and the cop who was at the front, I believe are complicit in a crime. It went on long enough for that to happen. Like, there's no question in my mind. That's what I'm saying. One of those cops should have said, "We get him up now. He's down. He's cuffed. He's not moving. Let's get him up. Let's get him in the car. Let's get him to the station. Book him. Let's go." Like, I don't know how long they're waiting for anybody else. Like, that made no sense to me. That said, just because this is unquestionably, in my mind, real, does not mean the next video I see or the next hashtag or sort out that happens that I'm immediately going to jump on board and go, "Oh my God," because I've learned my lesson. Because I'm not going to let my fear, hatred, and sorrow about what happened to George Floyd be weaponized against me and water down what happened to him through someone else or some other circumstance, unless it warrants. And that's what I'm talking about. That's all I'm talking about here. It is it's the same thing. It's like, believe all women really meant listen to all accusers, let them make their account before you start asking them where they were doing, what they were wearing, how many times they'd seen this person before, whether they sleep around a lot, who they're, can we talk to their boyfriend? All the
questions that you ask me all the time.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I've learned over time, believe no Johnnies is one of my hashtags. But the point I'm trying to make is you know what I'm saying? Like, it's crucial for the women who need to be believed that there be a process of listening without interrupting during that process. And then when someone comes forward, they're not shamed for what happened to them.
Right.
Those are the 2 most crucial aspects of that. There's
all right, my man, I'm going to have to
I know you got to go.
now.
I'm talking to the chat room, and you're wonderful, and I'll sign you off. Beat it. Get out of here.
Okay,
everybody say bye to Johnny Million. Everybody say bye, Johnny Million. Say bye. Cheers. I'm signing there. I signed you off. They can still hear you, but, that's their fault, really, not mine. Bye. Okay, now he's gone. The storyline in chat room, I wanted to tell you guys, and I'm going to hop off in just a minute and go watch the launch with the family and all that kind of stuff. Is that story? There's an old, I want to say it was an Outer Limits, but it may have been a Twilight Zone. Never seen it, but I'd always heard it, spoken of. Where this man comes home from work and his wife's clothes are torn and disheveled and she's got a cut on her lip. And he goes, "What happened?" He goes, "A man just left. He attacked me and sexually assaulted me." And he goes, he just ran out the door. And the man grabs his gun out of the dresser and gets in the car, and they start driving around looking for the guy. And she's staring out the window, and he's driving around. Where is he? Where is he? Do you see him? Do you see anybody? Like, do you see him? And she goes, "There he is." And the guy gets out of the car and goes, "Hey, you." And he chases the guy down. The guy's running, and he catches up finally, and he just holds him down, and he shoots him. And he walks back to the car, and he gets in, and he shuts the door all quiet, and he puts the gun in his lap, and then driving away. And she sees another guy and goes, "That's him." And that's the end of the story. The idea being is like, uh-oh, what did I just do? Those kind of stories. So that's why it's crucial in this, and why we don't allow the memory of someone like George Floyd, who was clearly killed extrajudicially and horribly. It's, and again, in my opinion, allegedly. It should be. I just feel like you shouldn't have. If you're not in pro news and you're not writing articles about it in the newspaper from a position of you have some sort of information or you've been able to interview people involved, you shouldn't have to say allegedly. But I'm going to. I think that's wise. This is the whole point, though. I'm not going to let the fact that I totally believe that George Floyd was murdered to let some right-wing nutcase ratchet up that boost stories so people get carried away about one that isn't as cut and dry, or about somebody else and say, you didn't care about this white guy who was shot who didn't have a weapon. You're like, yeah, well, it turns out if you peel back on that story, he had opened fire on the police and was reloading. Meanwhile, they're going to go look at this situation where the similar situation with a black guy who was actually firing on the police officer got killed, and they make you think it was an innocent killing so that you go, see, you don't care, blah, blah, blah. I just said, I pace myself, and I recommend that because the Russians are, I feel all paranoid even saying this and talk about conspiracies or whatever, but that's the weapon that is easiest to use by people who are not fans of democracy and want us to eat ourselves. And so I would request to everybody that, first of all, don't burn down shops and bust shop windows of people who supposedly are on the receiving end of the abuse that you are trying to protest against. It just seems logical. Second is blowing up or looting big chain stores has zero effect on their bottom line. None whatsoever. If anything, it helps them. They get insurance for the building and they get to build another one. And they'll build it in another neighborhood. They'll move it so that the people in that neighborhood who had just gotten their first target will lose it and limit the shopping and the availability of stuff in there. So there, solemn marches and the like are incredibly important, and they're while they do not give you that sense of immediacy, that feeling of immediacy, the most important thing is they build over time and have long-lasting effects. So that's my own take on it. And again, this is not me telling people how to behave. This is me asking people to behave. And understand that however righteous or angry or upset you genuinely feel, and I do not fault you for it, there is someone who's looking to monetize it or weaponize it against you. Be careful now. Okay, it's within the hour for the so the launch is at 12:30. I'll be tweeting. I'll live tweet it. But I'm gonna go join the family, and we're all gonna sit around and watch it because we're a space family. We're just a space family. That's just what we are. I want to thank you guys for the super chats, and anybody. I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody in this. Thank you, Amos. Oh, I didn't see Amos's. Thank you, Amos. Thank you, Julius, as well. Wow, and Richard, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Bonnie, for hosting me on Twitch as well, and Brad for the follow. And Mark, thank you for the tech fund. Thanks again, Green Seeker and Christina F. and Alex Jackson and Jill Carter and Hal Vickery and Grammar Diva. Thank you for the hearts, the super hearts. Those help us out. We're trying to build those up. It's such a weird thing on Periscope. It really is odd. So, anyways, yes, I am Space Ghost. It's true. Yeah, baby. So I will, there will be fewer ums next time because I will have fewer technological issues. And I appreciate you guys for being with us today. I will probably, I'll just say, I'm going to hop back on after bedtime tonight. That's all I'm going to say. So 9:30, something like that, for a little late night gathering, gaming and chatting on Twitch, more than likely. But talking about some of this stuff, no doubt, just to kind of get more of it off my chest in the time that we have, and also see how the launch went and kind of check back in with you guys. Tomorrow I will have, I'm going to have Richard Hunter streaming with me for another Double Neck Download. We're going to do that because Bob Kulick passed away. Johnny Million and I were talking about this. Bob Kulick, for those of you who don't know, Bruce Kulick was in KISS for a good long while. He joined on the Animalized tour and played on the Asylum album for the first time, whatever. He's a good dude. He's been tweeting songs and stuff from those albums and all that stuff. His brother Bob is in a band called Skull. He's bald and he has kind of like a pirate mustache setup or whatever. But Bob played some people's favorite Ace Frehley solos back in the day when Ace was a little too drunk to do his work. They would bring Bob in, and Bob would replace some of Ace's solos. And so I found out as an adult that some of my favorite Ace Frehley solos were actually Bob Kulick. And on Paul Stanley's solo album, Bob played most, if not all, of the solos on that record. And it's one of my favorite records. There's songs on that album that break my heart to this day that are so great, and I love that record. It was life-changing for me as an album, lyrically, on a bunch of different fronts. And Bob was an integral part of that. And I got to meet him at the Troubadour before I was known. It was in the 90s. I went and saw Kiss played like one of those live, like, oh my God shows. They're playing a club back in the 90s. And I got to go to it. A friend of mine at AM Records didn't want to go because she didn't like them. So I got to go in by myself and watch the show. It was fantastic. And there was Bob, looking like Bob, just like a bald-headed rock star before it was cool, with his handlebar mustache and his little like pirate goatee, sitting at the bar, and I was like, oh my God, it's Bob Kulick. No way. And I was probably one of the few people in there who knew who he was right out of the gate, or saw him and went, oh, that's really Bob Kulick. I mean, some people might have suspected it, but I went over and got to talk to him for a minute and said, you know, how much I loved his playing, how soulful his solos were, and how much I appreciated his playing, and what a fan I was. And many of you know that I had a moment where I had a chance to say that the very same thing to Madeline Kahn. She was, I mean, one of my influences. I love Madeline Kahn's comedy. I thought she was one of the most perfectly funny human beings that ever lived. And she died of cancer a year after I saw her at Kate Manalini's at this restaurant in Beverly Hills that I was eating at with an agent that I was hoping to sign with and whatever. And afterwards, she was sitting by herself eating. And I had this moment where I was like, I need to go over and tell her. And I didn't, because I didn't want to bother her. I had that I don't want to bother her attitude. And a year later, she was dead. And I keep reminiscing about that moment, thinking, what if that would have been the thing there's a doctor's building right across the street that I noticed later. And I've thought often about, what if her oncologist was in that building and she just had the news and she went to eat and was sitting by herself because she didn't want to call anybody yet. Like, I don't know that this is the case, but this is what I think about when I think about that moment. What if she'd have just found that out? And somebody walking up to her and going, I think you're one of the most perfectly funny, beautiful human beings who's ever lived. And I can't tell you what an influence you had on my career and how much you brought a vibrance and a joy to every possible thing I've ever seen you in. That, I just feel like that would have been the thing to hear. And so, having not said that, I made a promise to myself after she passed that I was never going to not say something like that ever again. And I met Bob Kulick after that. And that's why I took advantage of that moment. And I recommend you say that to not only the famous people in your life that you like their work. If you want to reach out to them, write them a letter. I don't care. Send them an email. Send them a tweet that says, can I just tell you this? I love this. This one line, this one moment, this 1 second on screen. And I want to say, pull your hood up and then come over and face that way. It'll be a big surprise. Oh my gosh. Who's that? It's a ghost of Minecraft. It's haunting my room. Hold on. Please take a moment to say it. No, here, but like, those are just floating Minecraft things. Look at that. Can you see it? Can you see it, Cam? That's so funny. It's so great. We have to get you one of those, like, all-body green suits. That's so awesome. All right, I love you. I'll be there in a minute, okay?
We want launch day brunch.
You want launch day brunch? Pancakes?
Everybody
wants me to cook pancakes? You got it. I'll do it. Absolutely. And we'll do veggie bacon and a little bit of eggs and stuff. I've been called to do brunch, so I'm going to go do that. But it's why I got the chance to talk to Bob Kulick, is because of that experience. And I want you guys to do that too. Don't take any of these folks for granted. So, I mean, I was able to tell Fred Willard at a charity event last year how much I appreciated his work and how lovely he was. And so I feel lucky that I had that moment, so do that. Now I'm going to go make pancakes. So I adore you guys. Thank you for joining me today. It's like, I know it's rough out there, and I know what you're seeing reflected back at you is very harsh, but it is not indicative of, Christina F., it was Paul Stanley's solo album. Of the 4 Kiss albums, It was the one that Paul Stanley did. It's got just Paul's face on the front of it in makeup. You can't miss it. They all four did one. My favorites in order are Paul and Ace and Gene and Peter's way down. I wasn't crazy about that. But yeah, so let them know. That's all I'm saying. Just let them know. The world, while everyone's like, oh, there's death and destruction everywhere and the world is falling apart, remind yourself that life is kicking death's ass right now. And you can solve more problems by sending some love to people than your outrage will ever do. I mean that honestly. And this is somebody who weaponizes my outrage into comedy as best I can every single day, so it's not used against me. That's why I do it. So take care of yourself, take care of somebody else, reach out. Remember, like Can't Stop Lying says, let somebody know you're thinking about them. Everybody needs it. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for the support and the super chats and being Patreon subscribers and all that stuff. I can't tell you how much it means to me and the little one. You know, one day, you know, I get a new series or something like that, which is entirely possible. What I want to do is take every dime I've earned off of Patreon and all these other things, which I've kept a heavy track of, and it's all going to go to charity if I ever find myself in a position to not need it to, you know, feed myself and fuel the show. So take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. We'll see you next time. Okay, bye.
Am I getting through to you? Over!
That was really cool, by the way.
I gotta barbecue your ass, they molasses!
Man, I'm tired of being right.
Just the facts, ma'am.
Sportos, motorheads, geeks, sluts, bloods, wastoids, dweebies, dickheads. They all adore him. They think he's a righteous dude.
I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude.
I never realized how much my advice could hurt people until my advice hurt me. Most of all was that you should always take responsibility for your actions, unless you don't have to.